I was born into power, a crown, hovering over my cradle. Yet I did not take it immediately. The weight of Iran's ancient empire pressed upon my family for generations. And I learned early that authority was both a gift and a burden. My father, a man of will, but not of vision, ruled until the Allies intervened in 1941. Compelling him to step aside, I was thrust into a world where the survival of the monarchy depended not only on wealth or military might, but on the delicate balance of tradition and modernity. Educated in Switzerland and the United States, I was molded to see beyond the deserts and bazaars of my homeland, to imagine an Iran that could rival the great civilizations of Europe and the Americas. The West promised progress, technology, and freedom, and I absorbed these ideals like sunlight, believing they could illuminate the path for my nation. When I ascended the throne, I did so with restraint. I did not crown myself immediately, waiting until 1967. For there is little honor in ruling a nation mired in poverty. My vision was ambitious to transform Iran into a modern empire, a beacon of progress, where industry, education, and culture could flourish in harmony. I called this dream the White Revolution. It was more than a series of reforms. It was a bold experiment to reinvent an ancient civilization in a fraction of a century. Land reforms broke the feudal grip of traditional landlords, giving peasants a stake in their own fields. Women, long confined to the shadows of private life, were granted suffrage. Schools multiplied, universities modernized, and new industries sprouted like shoots after a rain. Roads and bridges linked cities that had been isolated for centuries. And Tehran began to shimmer with the confidence of a capital in transformation. Oil, our lifeblood, became the engine of prosperity. When global prices surged, state revenues skyrocketed from $2.5 billion to $20 billion. Suddenly, Iran could dream in colors as vivid as those in Paris or New York. Yet, even as skylines rose and the hum of factories filled the air, a silent tension grew beneath the surface. My vision demanded speed, and speed often crushes the delicate structures of society. I saw the world in numbers, GDP, literacy rates, industrial output. But I failed to see the human cost behind the statistics. While the elite basked in luxury, millions of Iranians clung to subsistence, their villages unchanged, their lives still bound by centuries. old hardships. Corruption seeped through the cracks. Relatives and close allies enriched themselves beyond measure, indulging in a decadence that contrasted starkly with the suffering outside palatial walls. I believed that modernization would eventually lift everyone, that the tide of progress would carry the poor along with the rich. But in my eagerness, I overlooked the growing resentment, the quiet anger that brewed in tea houses and marketplaces, where whispers of discontent began to circulate. The clergy, guardians of Iran's spiritual identity, saw my reforms not as progress, but as an existential threat. Granting women the right to vote, encouraging Western dress, promoting secular education. These were not minor irritations. They were, in their eyes, an assault on centuries of tradition and faith. A figure emerged among them, Ayatollah Khomeini, whose words resonated with the faithful. He painted me as a puppet of foreign powers, a man betraying Islam for Western gold. I dismissed him at first, exiling him to Iraq, confident that the force of my state could suppress dissent. I sent the military into the streets when protests flared, believing that discipline and strategy could quench a fire before it spread. But repression has a paradoxical effect. The harder you press, the more explosive the resistance becomes. I had underestimated the depth of devotion, the intensity of belief, the strength of a culture that prized its religious heritage above all else. As the 1970s progressed, my vision of Iran as a modern paradise seemed increasingly fragile. Inflation crept in, eroding the wealth I had created. The bazaars, those ancient arteries of commerce, joined the chorus of dissent. Students, intellectuals, merchants, and clerics converged, their grievances merging into a single roaring demand for justice. I convened councils, implemented reforms, offered concessions, but each gesture seemed only to embolden the opposition. The nation that once celebrated my ambitions now murmured with fear and suspicion. The streets of Tehran, once a stage for parades and celebrations, became theaters of unrest. Guards and soldiers faced citizens who knew they had the power of collective will. I had built a military among the strongest in the world, yet its steel could not pierce the human determination that surged against it. By 1979, the storm I had long sensed, but never fully comprehended, descended upon me. Millions poured into the streets, chanting, shouting, and demanding the end of my rule. In the cacophony, I heard both anger and despair, the lament of a people whose hopes had been promised too quickly and whose cultural identity had been challenged too fiercely. The army, for all its strength, wavered, torn between loyalty to a monarch and empathy for the masses. My advisors pleaded for compromise. My generals whispered of coups and countermeasures. I realized, perhaps too late, that no strategy could reconcile the contradictions. I had imposed modernity without social cohesion, wealth without justice, reform without respect for tradition. When I left Tehran, my heart carried a weight heavier than any crown. The bitter recognition that my dream, however noble in intention, had paved the way for a different destiny, one ruled not by me, but by forces I could no longer control. Exile was not merely a physical displacement. It was a severing from a world I had shaped yet could not govern. I lived among strangers in lands where my name was known more as a cautionary tale than as a symbol of achievement. I watched from afar as Iran transformed into a theocracy, a reality starkly opposed to the empire I had imagined. Some called me a tyrant, others a visionary undone by circumstance. In truth, I was simply a man who believed in the possibility of rapid change, who underestimated the resilience of history and the depth of collective identity. My life became a testament to the peril of ambition, untempered by cultural wisdom, and to the fragile line between greatness and collapse.